Hi folks, my name is Seamus O'Donnell. I'm here in Cluain Gardens, Falcarra, County Donegal. You're very welcome to join me in the gardens here, and I'll take you around now shortly. But for the moment now, just a bit of the background. I came here, this is my grandparents' place, came here in the 90s. So it was one big field, basically, a wet meadow, and I just didn't know what I was going to do. Had a mission, I thought, to do something about wildlife, maybe what can I do to help wildlife. So I realised then, looking around the countryside here, that there were not too many trees, and so I thought maybe there's an opening there for growing and selling, making a bit of a living from just greening the countryside up a bit. So I had no knowledge about what exactly would grow in situations like this by the seaside, getting blasted so many days of the year. So I started in front of the turf fire in my wee seat, just learning about suitable candidates, the hardy boys first of all. So from then on, I just got more interested in other varieties from other parts of the world that would take the conditions of no real frost and like plenty of wet, But I've found so far that there's plants growing here that are not supposed to grow in wet, peaty ground. So I'm amazed with what will grow here in Donegal, really, providing you provide some type of shelter from the salt-laden winds. So I suppose I'm lucky that I have had an opportunity like this, thanks to my grandfather who went to the Klondike in the 1910s. So he made his money on the gold rush and came back here and bought the farm and built the house and did this bit of farming afterwards. And I suppose they passed on and the house was lying here, so that's probably when I stepped in here, and I'm stepping in and out of plants since the 90s, really. So if you would like to join me in a wee tour of the gardens here. We're here, I'd call this, I suppose it's the bird garden here, so that's a symbolic of the cormorant, and I needed some sort of a backdrop then, so that's why the moon was created, so that you could see the cormorant even better. So the cormorant was made by a local man, Ewan Berry, a very talented man, and it started from there then, that was the cormorant on an outcrop in the sea, and then I sort of put grasses around the verges to symbolise the motion of waves, and then interspersed through the grasses sort of soft looking plants, so some of them maybe even to mirror seaweeds, so that you could even get this underwater feel, and the sea, say for instance the fish over there now, you could be undersea with that image there, I think, So this would change in the springtime is totally different. There's loads of bulbs and there's other plants in colour. So the whole idea about the gardens is that they will provide interest for, 4 seasons of the year, really, And the main task is to incorporate plants that are good for attracting the butterflies and the bees and any other flyers at all. And then, of course, we have the birds. So here we have, just on this is actually a native plant to Argentina. So we have a lovely butterfly on that now. So it gives my heart a big beat, when I see just the simple wee plant like that landing on something that I suppose I'm responsible for. And I really do think that people should be making a far bigger effort in trying to provide some interest for themselves as well as a home for wildlife, because we need it badly, especially in the days that we're in. I leave sort of I think the fashion at the minute is to have stuff not in straight lines or not weed free. So that really suits my game because I don't have time to be weeding everywhere. But there should be no brown earth anyway. Like it should be covered by some type of a plant, whether it be introduced or just comes in the wind. So like even here, it's just a native moss, you know. But sure, when you look at that, it's absolutely stunning. And like I have people like coming up to me and asking me, have I got that in a pot, you know? And like that just arrived itself, and you'll find that in a damp, well-drained spot. These are, I suppose, these grass, there's lovely movement with grasses and they provide interest all year round. And again, I suppose you find out the history. I would find out every plant's history and where it's native to. So that would be sort of South America, well, maybe more North Mexican plant. And here we have a plant that's native to South Africa. So that again, I try and get sort of more unusual plants. They may be not everybody's cup of tea, but I think they're stunning anyway, you know, and they just make that wild blend of plants. Another thing I suppose I should mention here is that a lot of plants are positioned to catch the light. So for instance, we look at this shrub here, looking at it from this angle, it's okay, it's fine. But then if we go to the other side, with the light shining through it, it just sparkles and lights up. I think that's the way to go, you know. So I think, say in the evening time now, if I'm facing west, I think I suppose the plant's between me and the west, so that's where you're going to get most of the light shining through the leaf. And I cut this back next year or last autumn. So if you cut back plants, sometimes you'll get bigger foliage on it the following year. But you really, like if you just go into the plant, you just see all the veins, and you know, you just don't give it a second. You just spend more time looking at the architecture and the way, like if you see all these veins, you know, like that's the water system, you know, that's the pipes going along there, and look at how stunning that is there. So that's what Cluain is all about. And here we have the seed heads from a South African plant. It's called Angel's Fishy Rod. So that was beautiful earlier on, like with purple flowers. But this is the sales area here now, and I suppose it's filled to the brim from beginning of April onwards. You know, it's a bit quiet. This is middle of September now, so things are slowing down a bit. But you know, you can still plant it. Basically, if it's a sheltered situation, you can plant it any time of year. A lot of people have this notion that you can only plant when there's an hour in the month, which is totally wrong. That's for trees that are not in containers. So if plants are in containers, you can set at any stage. My second in command, he made this a few years ago now, but it was basically just a mound of stones that were lying there. So I told Donny to put something together, and this is what what has turned out. So what turns out is the fact that all these wild plants will just move in and sort of decorate it a bit. Like there's a hedge around it, but that'll be maintained. But like actually the stone itself, like it's very interesting to see what just will arrive on stone, you know, and then they're going to build up. The moss will die down, that'll provide more nutrition for other plants, and then you have all of a sudden you'll have a layer of soil, and then all of a sudden you'll have a bigger plant growing in. Often that we do get blue skies here, but I tell you what, you don't be long forgetting about the grey skies when you see a blue like that. It's just so good to see it. That's a eucalyptus. And the eucalyptus are thriving here, but the only problem is that they grow so quickly that if you don't keep cutting them back, they'll just keel over. So I do have to do that quite a bit with plants, you know, is just cut them back so that they're not getting the worst of the wind, you know, and they get denser at the bottom. So then after a few years, you can just let them be, then let them go. But I think it's very important in the seaside situation to keep things low for the first 2-3 years, and then they're fine then, just to balance out the root. Collection of plants in pots. Some of them well, they're not hardy enough for staying out all winter, but the majority are okay, you know. So it's plants from all over the world, between Australia and Japan, South Africa. Where else? We have more South African plants. We have the Himalayan ginger. We have a very interesting plant here. It's called Fascicularia bicolor. So that's actually a bromeliad. So that grows in the tree trunks in trees or in forests in Uruguay. Uruguay. So thriving here in the wet Donegal climate. Fuchsia. We have a beautiful fuchsia here from Bolivia. It's absolutely stunning, but that'll be pretty tender now. So unless you had a very, very dry, sunny situation, you wouldn't be leaving that out for the winter time. I love this agapanthus here. It's called grass cup. So I seen it in South Africa many years ago, and there was wee sunbirds just darting from one flower to the other. So that's what captured my imagination anyway. Not that I'm going to see sunbirds in Donegal, but I do see an odd wee wasp in there. So I suppose at this stage I could point out how important shelter is by the seaside, because we are whipped, you know, with gale force winds, and they seem to be getting more common. So this is a good example of what I've created here, you know. Like this is one line of defense here. So I'm using sycamore and ash and alder and Scots pine, and then I have a bit of a open glade, and then another barrier, you know, for the wind, because generally, you know, the wind is only the sheltered side is only twice the height of the tree, you know. After that, that's the wind factor again, you know. So I know it's not easy to create, but if you don't have the space, but you know, you can still be training plants, you know, that'll aid the shelter. This is another lovely stone feature here, and I suppose it's only the start. That Donny again, the master Donny, and unfinished, but like I'll diggy that up with some tree planting now to make it even nicer. So I just think stonework is so beautiful, and it's an art in itself. You know, I just love it, and the fact that it's dry stone as well allows like insect life to establish. So rather than throwing loads of cement in between the stones, you know, I just let it be home for whoever wants it. So we call this the pond garden, and I suppose this has only been planted out in the last maybe 8 years. I had to wait for shelter first of all. So now I have my shelter, and now I can grow more or less anything that'll take a bit of moisture in the ground. So I can have my azaleas and rhododendrons in the springtime, and leading on through the summertime with lots of herbaceous things, flowering shrubs, lots of ornamental grasses, and then I have October to look forward to, because then we'll have beautiful autumn colours. And actually I think the gardens are well worth a visit in the autumn time, because there's trees here that people wouldn't normally, well, around here you're not going to see much autumn colour anyway, but because I have the shelter established now, there's beautiful colours, you know. And if there's any way at all you can get out and visit the gardens at that time of year, I think you'd be blown away, because I was blown away last year. That's where the joy of gardening is it comes to the fore, you know, and not to be afraid of just doing what you want to do rather than what's in the books, you know, that you have to do this. No such thing. Do what you want to do, and I think just be creative and enjoy it, and be happy that you have a chance. And if it's not working, just take it out. Don't be sitting there looking at it for years. This is a lovely grass from Korea. Miscanthus thrives here in the wet ground. This particular plant mightn't take the wind as much, but it's still instant height in the season. You know, you don't have to be waiting for years for a wee shrub to grow up to this height. So that's the lovely thing about ornamental grasses. You know, you'll get your height in a matter of months, and well, look at that for a stunning flower at this time of year. This is the pond, which was a bit of an experiment again. Didn't know whether the water would lie, but it sure is lying now. And I think it's just incredible what benefit this is to wildlife. I've been sitting here in the evening time, you know, just checking out what was around, and between dragonflies and damselflies and all the other types of little beetles, and of course the bats are lapping up the water as well. So there were just one evening, just last week actually, I was sitting here, I was following this wee bat. He was a bit slow now, but he was whatever type he was, I'm not sure. And then all of a sudden looked away and I heard this flutter, and I just looked back again, and there was an owl, and he had just missed catching the wee bat. So there you go, owls eat bats. But it's just little minutes like that, you know, mean so much when you have a space to provide a home for wildlife, you know. Like I have deer in here. I didn't really want to have deer in here, but the deer are visiting now. So they're having a wee nibble here and there, which is not great, you know, but I don't mind a wee bit. It's fine. This is one of my favourite grasses here now. This is called Cyaunocloa rubra, which is the red tussock grass. It's extremely tough for the wind and loves growing in wetter conditions. So it's an ideal candidate for seaside gardens. And you can imagine how this looks like, what it looks like in a very windy day. It's just beautiful. Okay, well, we're in the exotic garden now. Here we have a fuchsia. It's called Fuchsia Lady Bacon. I don't particularly like the name, but it's a pretty nice plant all the same. It's a stunner. So that's been flowering probably since May. So that's what you want. You want to be entertained for months and months on end. So I suppose at the base of these plants you provide more interest. Like, you know, there's beautiful ferns here that I think is more for foliage. It doesn't always have to be about flowers all the time, you know. So that's stunning. I think I really like ferns anyway. Here we have an ordinary Choosing palm, native of Korea, I believe. And I'm like even experimenting with the wee pouches that you would get on the trunks, you know, and just inserting wee plants to see if they're going to take. There's a wee fern, that's going to take no problem at all. There's that fascicularia again, very happy. And there's a very sensitive wee air plant there. So it's all about experimenting again, you know. Begonia, sometimes it might be the underside of the leaf that's more interesting than the overside. Here's actually this plant here is native to Mexico. It's called Amicia zygomaurus. It's related to clover. But the interesting thing about it is that in the evening time, the leaves will just fold down like that, which is very striking. You know, that's just to prevent transpiration. So that's the plant's way of reserving this water. There's actually a lovely scent to this one. Normally, a lot of them wouldn't have any scent, but this particular one has a lovely exotic scent. There's another type there. So, for instance, this tree here is called the foxglove tree, and what I do every year is I cut it back, you know, so there's how far I cut it back to. So that's how much growth we've had in this season. And the reason I cut it back is to get big leaves, because this is the exotic garden, as I said, so when you cut back some plants, you'll get lovely big leaves, whereas if that was left grow to tree size, they would be a lot smaller. So that's a nice bonus to have. But that's what I'm trying to create anyway, is just an exotic touch. This takes me away, you know. I like to think that I'm somewhere else. Sometimes, you know. And especially later on this evening now, the sun will be shining through this banana. This banana is a native of Ethiopia, but I'll remove it now for the summer or for the winter time. You can see now the way the light is catching that lovely red leafed plant up there now. So again, plants are positioned to catch the light. This is a canna here, so you know, that's absolutely stunning. So I love it at this time of the day. You know, sometimes the evening light is the most interesting time to be in the garden, because the sun is lower, so it's shining through the foliage. So definitely what I would consider very important is you think of where plants should go in your garden in the evening time. So like I'd be going around here with a pot in my hand and just seeing trying to find a good position, you know, mostly in the evening time, because that's when they have time to be in their garden as well. So give the plants the best chance. So I think that's a very important thing to be practicing. Right. So this is a sculpture, and it's actually the trunk of a tree fern. So I would have purchased this many years ago, and along with some tree ferns. So it would originally come from New Zealand. So it was sculptured in New Zealand. But you can see how it's settling in, getting a nice hairdo and a bit of warmth at the base, you know. But that's the lovely thing about a sculpture, I think, you know, when Mother Nature can add to the beauty of the sculpture itself. I'm very, very fond of this sculpture. I think the main reason why I'm here is to do my wee bit for nature, you know. So I'm just, like, I know I have a collection of plants, but I think the most important plants to me are the ones that are contributing to the wildlife. So even we're standing beside this plant here, and you have to really get down and look to see what is really going on down there, you know. But that's what it's all about for me, is providing little hotels, little restaurants for all these insects that are so important for us. And if everybody could do just, even if it was one plant, you know how many plants that would be if there's a lot of people doing it. So we really have to get on the ball now and do our bit, I think, you know. And I think this is a prime example of someone that's facilitating just an area, facilitating a home for wildlife, really, you know. There's no pesticides, no herbicides, no fungicides anywhere near this place. So you can see what happens when you provide the right conditions. Come on, gotcha. And now Meadow, here, come on, gotcha. Hey!